Hi everyone, welcome to the weekly politics show. I'm Councillor Premier with co-host Councillor Andrew Wood. So in today's program, we're going to discuss about the fire at Providence Wharf. So many of you guys would have heard on the news there was a massive fire in a block of flats in Providence Wharf out on the Isle of Dogs in the area of Blackwall. So we're going to discuss the issues around the fire. I know Andrew's been quite active on the ground as well as other councillors and the local MP, but we're going to be joined by our guest Harry. Harry, do you want to just introduce yourself and the organisation you're part of and how you guys come together and the issues around the fire, and then I'll let Andrew sort of like take over from there because he's been writing a lot on the issue. So Harry, over to you.
Absolutely. Hi there, I'm Harry Scoffin here. We set up a sort of leaseholder action group called Tower Hamlets Justice for Leaseholders. I think it was back in January. So there's lots of leasehold flats going up all the time. And unlike all the rest of the world, when you buy a flat in Wales, it's this crazy like feudal system where basically you don't own the flat and you're basically sort of a tenant and you're treated as a tenant, but then you spend all this money on someone else's building. And then obviously some of the people from New Providence Wharf, the leaseholders there, were part of this group. And then it was sort of dormant for a bit. And then all of a sudden fire happened. And then that was kind of that galvanized the group. And also in my sort of day job, I work for a charity where we try and help people that are stuck in leaseholds. And obviously the fire is tragic. Luckily, no one died. But it emphasised this idea that people don't have autonomy and control over their own homes. And there was the whole issue about Ballymore. Unusually, a lot of developers, when they sell the flats, they then wave goodbye to a site and they'll hand it over to an investor or the residents themselves. But in this case, the developer is still the freeholder. So they still have ultimate responsibility for the block of flats down the road. And the thing is that there's been, some residents would argue that there's been real friction with the freeholder to try and get them to pay to make their own building safe, which they still actually own. So, and there's all been, that's happened. And there was I think a fire a few years ago as well. Luckily, no one died in that, but that was like a warning sign. And that I think was to do with a fuse as well. And this is all up in the air at the moment, but now there's this other fire and obviously the horror of that and things supposedly not working. And I guess we've got to be careful with what we say in terms of what worked and what didn't. But obviously people are angry. And then we had this protest that was organized within 24 hours. And we were lucky to get about 200 people down at Mill Harbour, which is another one of Emerald's flagship schemes, which was, and ironically, it was opposite a hotel where the people that were being housed from the fire in that block were, and some people hadn't even heard about the protest, but they saw a protest and joined. But we had people from all across London. Few people came from Ipswich. So this is a big crisis beyond Tower Hamlets. This is a national crisis, even affecting flat owners in Scotland, basically. People are looking at huge remediation bills for buildings that they thought were safe when they first bought their flats.
Andrew, I know you were on the ground when the fire happened, along with others like the mayor, the other local councillors on the island. The MP was there. We had a flyby visit by Robert Jenrick as well. So Andrew, over to you. What's been the response of the authorities to this and your conversations with others?
So we're still at the stage where we're trying to find out what happened and what the causes of the fire were. And it has been fairly widely reported that the smoke alarm detectors weren't working or didn't pick up the fire. And therefore the emergency fire doors didn't close automatically as they should have done. It also meant that the fire alarm didn't go off. And it also meant that in the emergency stairwell, there should have been like sort of extra air forced in to sort of like overpressure the stairwell. And that helps keep smoke out. And that also didn't switch on because the smoke detectors, as said, have been reported, didn't work on that floor, on the 8th floor. And that's why the smoke spread so widely within the building. Because that's what, when we looked at the videos, we were curious, why was smoke appearing over there and up there? And it's simply because the emergency fire doors didn't close. So we're still trying to gather all of that information. I know tomorrow London Fire Brigade are giving a briefing to residents of the core that was directly affected, Core D at New Providence Wharf. And also London Fire Brigade are working on their own report. I went on Monday and saw them looking at the outside of the building themselves. And then the other issue we're obviously now dealing with is that we have a lot of people who are basically stuck in hotels, because I think fortunately for them, this site is actually located within 100 meters of two major hotels, the Ibis and the Radisson. So the residents will put up in hotels nearby. But my understanding is that they'll be in hotels for between 3 and 6 months, depending on the level of damage to their own apartments. So,
and there is a duty of care by Tower Hamlets Council, in the sense that we signed off on the construction. So just to explain to readers, listeners, is that before a building is constructed, there's something called fire regulations, and they've been around since the Great Fire of London, to make sure that buildings are fire compliant. And Tower Hamlets Council has something called building control. So there's two stages to getting a building up. One is you get planning permission to build it, and then you do a separate set of drawings with specifications and send it off to building control in Tower Hamlets Council, look at it and see if, in case of a fire, is that building safe, is everything working. Now, Tower Hamlets Council signed off on those drawings, on that construction, and building control inspectors do actually come and do physical inspections as well. From my experience, what went wrong? Because it seems like the basic things like emergency doors weren't working, or the fire control system. Has those questions been asked as well?
Yeah, so the building was actually complete in 2004, and that was before the 2005 deregulation of building control. So at that point, Tower Hamlets Council signed off all buildings. That's no longer the case. But then the question is, so in terms of the smoke detectors, did they work at some point in the past? And if they worked correctly, would the building have then performed as it was designed to perform? In which case, that's why the building control signed it off. So the question will be about why the smoke detectors didn't work. Was it a maintenance issue? Was it a power issue? And we don't know. That's what we need to try and find out. What was going on with that. And that's a sort of different issue from building control in the first place. And then the question is, who does the regulation on the maintenance side of things, and who checks those kind of things, and where the responsibilities lie. And I'm not entirely sure myself. And again, it's one of the issues that we need to kind of follow up on. So the council have some responsibilities in this area, but not complete. And I think one of the problems that everybody has is, Ballymore have some responsibility, residents have some responsibility, Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government have some responsibility, but who's going to take responsibility for all of this stuff? And we don't know yet. And one of the things that I've asked for is that Barking and Dagenham Council had a very similar fire back in 2019 at Samuel Garside House. Slightly different issues, but also a lot of damage, and fortunately no fatalities. And they commissioned this really good independent report that kind of went through all of the lessons to be learnt. And I found that report very useful. And I think we should do something very similar at New Providence Wharf as well, because there's lots of questions. Some of them the London Fire Brigade will answer, and I think some of them somebody else needs to answer about some of these issues. So.
Harry, there's a question for you. Did you see that? I'll repeat that.
Yeah, flag up again for me.
Harry, are you going to explain why my sister is in my flat crying about the dirty socks? Oh, sorry about that, mate. Sorry, that's a troll. Sorry, I thought that was to do with the fire.
No worries.
No problem.
Someone's got a sense of humour at this time, which is good.
Yeah, okay. Harry will answer that off the program. It's got nothing to do with New Providence. But we're going to actually, Andrew, am I correct that you've had discussions with councillors on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, in particularly the Housing Scrutiny Committee, where you're actually going to look into this issue? Can you explain the process of it? And if you are going to look into it, what aspects are you going to look into it, and what recommendations you're going to make to the mayor?
Okay, so Councillor Etisham Hack, who's also the councillor for this building in Blackwall and Cubitt Town, is also chair of the Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Subcommittee. And our next meeting, and I'm just double checking the date, is on the 22nd, 6:30 p.m. on the 22nd of June. And what he wants to do is to convert that meeting into a kind of fire safety focused meeting, and basically will ask residents to speak at that meeting about what they've learned and their experiences. I got an email today from the London Fire Brigade, so I've now got contact details. So I will forward on Councillor Ed Shamhack's request for them to attend as well, just so we can get this all done and organised as quickly as possible. And I think, as I said earlier, the council don't have complete responsibility for this area. So some of the recommendations that the committee might make, may be irrelevant for the council. But I think what we should do as councillors is capture as much as possible of all of the recommendations. A few may be for us, a few may be for the London Fire Brigade, some will be for MHCLG, and hopefully we'll have a first quick learning exercise from that. And then hopefully also the council will then commission a report that I was talking about, so we can kind of do the more detailed work as well, not just about now, but also what happens over the coming months as well.
From a sort of residents' perspective, Isle of Dogs perspective, there is an element of they shouldn't be approving any more of these high-rise buildings until they actually sort out the fire infrastructure. So I was lucky to grow up in Singapore, and you've got fire brigades everywhere. And we have Millwall Fire Station, and they didn't actually have a ladder long enough, from what I understand. And there was a video, and it should go viral because it's so powerful. You literally see the hose, and it's like a water cleaning company, window cleaning company. They're trying to get to the fire, and the water just goes down again, and they can't reach it. And then they had to wait 30 minutes, supposedly, according to the residents who spoke to me, for the right equipment to come in, I think, from Greenwich. Now, that's unacceptable when we've got so many high-rise blocks going up all the time, and it seems like there's more planning applications going through. The point is that imagine if there was two fires, say if there's a storm or a thunder or a hot summer, and you have two fires on the same patch on Isle of Dogs, how people are going to wait half an hour. And then we've got the stay put policy, which is crazy as well. People are going to stay put in a building, and that assumes that the whole building has got good compartmentation, that it means that the fire will not spread. But obviously in a lot of these buildings, they've been thrown up cheaply. Andrew was saying deregulation 2005. I think there was deregulation in the 80s, where basically developers were allowed for the first time to have their own inspectors. So you basically have developers marking their own homework. So it's quite amazing that in this site, the developer actually outsourced it to the council. But all of that stuff has to be looked at again, because if we're wanting more and more buildings, we have to actually get apartment living right, which means making it safe. And then there's the Asda development scheme, I think Andrew Wood's been writing about recently. The fact is that Thames Water, which is statutory consultee, they basically said that we don't have the water infrastructure. So that's another thing. Actually, if we've got the water pressure, and I don't want to be a NIMBY or alarmist, but have you even got the water pressure to sustain trying to hose down a huge fire? I don't know.
Looks like these are issues to be discussed. Andrew, before we go into a break, would this meeting be signposted? The over in scrutiny.
Yeah, it will be. So I think so. Councillor Shamhack sort of agreed. He said he wanted to do that on Monday. Obviously, it's a change to the agenda, so we need to pull it all together, and I need to send an email to some of my contacts about it as well, and obviously then copy in Councillor Hack as well. So probably just need to give us maybe, I guess, another week just to firm up all of the details and how it's going to work, because we're still only a week away from the fire. But yeah, but hopefully soon there'll be more detail about this meeting and the agenda. So
we're going to go straight into a break. After the break, we're going to still carry on the discussion with Harry, because some of the aftercare of the victims of the